hear us. April, these things have been going so smooth, and we hadn't had any trouble at all. On the last one, it hesitated there for a moment or two,
Uh,
and then pick right back up. So we didn't lose anything. But like now with David has hit or failed to hit some button. Is that coffee? Is that
Yeah.
coffee?
yeah.
Oh man, okay. I can taste it.
Yeah.
I can
Okay,
taste it.
I believe we're good now. We're recording, and I apparently am having some connectivity trouble. So
Okay.
probably that will, if I go away, it will. And so I'll go away, and we'll go right to it will go right to the cloud and be recorded. April, it's great to see you, and thank you for joining us. I'm going to share just one short story about April. April is got her undergraduate degree at Xavier in, I believe, 2010. She came to Purdue to the statistics program and got her PhD a few years ago. And my first year at the Field of Dreams was 2009, so you would have been a senior. And the next year was my second year. And of course, I had met Bill Jones the year before, and he came running up to me, very enthusiastic, said, "I sent you a student, I sent you a student." And of course, I didn't know anything. And of course, it's because statistics and math are different departments. And it took me a little while to figure out that I hadn't dropped the ball. But I spent a weekend being very worried about that. But we're very proud of April. She's doing some data science work. She's going to tell people all about it. Donald has been doing these great interviews, and I'm going to leave and let you get to your conversation. Thank you both so much.
Thank you so much, David.
Thanks, David.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good morning, April. How are you this morning?
Pretty good. How about you?
Good. Is it still morning where you are? Is it approaching noon?
No, it's 9 a.m. where I am. I'm in Seattle.
Okay. Indeed, it's morning there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, as mentioned, I'm Don Cole, and I'm a Alliance member and been with the Alliance for quite a while. And we are doing these interviews in hopes that we could put them online in various places, and they would help individuals who watch them to see people like you. And so we want to get your perspective on a number of things and your experiences as you've gained a lot over the years. And so I'm going to ask you some questions. Some of them will be closed-end questions, and some will be open-ended. They'll give you a chance to reflect and philosophize, if you will. And the whole thing should take a little less than an hour. But I don't want you to feel rushed at any time, because I don't have anything afterwards. And I can talk as long as you'd like. Is that all right?
Sounds good.
Okay, so we'll go down that particular path. And so let me maybe start off by asking you to give us a short mathematical chronology of your mathematical life. Maybe tell me where you were born and grew up, and then tell me about the schools that you attended all the way through the PhD.
Okay, for sure. So, so I'm originally from New Iberia, Louisiana, which is a very small town about 2 hours south west of New Orleans. And I went to a high school that was pretty small because I was from a small town. And because of that, I think perhaps there were not as many course offerings as you might see at a more larger school. But I was able to take all the way up to Calculus 1 in high school. And going into those classes, I was kind of doing it a little bit begrudgingly, only because my brother's a chemical engineer, and he kept telling me, you need to take calculus before you leave college if you want to do anything in the sciences. At the time, I didn't even know that I wanted to do the sciences, but I listened to my big brother's wisdom, and I took those classes anyway. And by the time I took calculus, I kind of started to like math a little bit more than I had in the past, but I wasn't all the way there yet. So after high school, I was really looking for a college experience that would be nurturing and I still kind of didn't know what path I wanted to take in terms of a career. So something where I would have room to grow and figure that out. And also taking the advice of my brother who went to Xavier University of Louisiana in New Orleans, I decided that I would apply there and go there as well. So I started college the August after, so like approximately 1 year after Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. So I kind of entered my freshman year into a pretty strange environment that was pretty like ravaged by the storm. But I really, over the course of my 4 years, got to see the city kind of revive itself. And another thing I got to kind of revive while I was in college was like a love of math. So I remember my first math class was Calculus 1 with Dr. Bill Jones. And he was unlike any teacher I had ever in my whole life. He was just like this little man who's up there yelling about calculus. He has the mouth of a sailor. I had never experienced anything like that, but he kept me engaged the whole time. And I think because I had that calculus experience in high school, I wasn't like super worried about retaining the material or anything, like because it wasn't new to me. I was able to kind of like go that step deeper and really understand the larger connections in the subject. And I really think that in that calculus class with Dr. Jones, I really kind of found my love of math for the first time. And Dr. Jones is really perceptive. So I think he picked up on that in me pretty quickly. And at the time I was an undecided major, and Dr. Jones was like, well, you know, you really should major in math. And at first I was like, oh, of course not. And I majored in computer science for all of about a week before I realized that I would have to be in the lab coding until super late at night. And I ended up changing my major to math after a while. And kind of by that time, my path was pretty set. Dr. Jones continued to be like a huge mentor in my entire college career. He really encouraged me to seek out research opportunities. I did undergraduate research programs every summer that I was in college.
Oh, great.
Yeah, mostly because of Dr. Jones's encouragement. And also my senior year, I did a research project with Dr. Kosick, who is also in the math department. So that was a really awesome experience because I got a publication in my undergrad years through that. Yeah, so that was really wonderful. And so as I was going into my senior year, I was kind of leaning towards wanting to be an actuary. So like insurance pricing with my math degree, but I really didn't have a super strong sense of what I wanted to do. But the whole time, Dr. Jones had, from the very beginning, been kind of seeding the idea that, you know, I really had the aptitude and I really had the drive that could take me through graduate school. And I think his strategy in convincing me so was like slow exposure to more and more research and what graduate school is like. And one of those major exposures was the Alliance program. So I went to the Field of Dreams conference, I think probably either 2 or 3 years. And I remember I saw snow for the first time in Iowa at one of those. And I actually met some people that I still know.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Dr. R.B. McGee, who has a PhD in math from Purdue. We were actually in grad school at the same place at the same time. So that was pretty cool. I met him at the Alliance program. And so that was definitely, the Alliance program was my exposure to like what the application process to grad school would look like, what actually the structure of grad school like programs is like. And I think that's through that program is when I really started kind of thinking about what I wanted out of a graduate program. And ultimately I ended up applying to a number of different programs. And ended up choosing to go to Purdue Statistics. I chose to go the statistics route rather than the math route because I had always felt more drawn to like the applied mathematics side of things. And I had a couple of statistics classes in undergrad, and that kind of really felt like discipline I was sort of wanting to go towards. And I was thinking about probability and such anyway, because at the time I still thought I wanted to be an actuary, which kind of faded away at some point. Yeah. So at that point, I ended up at Purdue in Indiana. It was a huge culture shift, going from like the really like nurturing and supportive and like really special environment of an HBCU that I had in undergrad to like this new huge university that was primarily white, and like there are a lot of people that didn't look like me. And it was just an entirely new experience in a place so far from home that I had never stayed that far from home for an extended amount of time. Oh gosh, I almost forgot one of the most important parts of the story. In between undergrad and grad school, I did a program called EDGE, Enhancing Graduate Diversity. Sorry, I forget what EDGE stands for, but I did EDGE, and EDGE is basically a bridge program for women. It's 4 weeks, and it focuses on kind of getting particularly your real analysis and abstract algebra skills up to being ready to kind of go into a graduate program. And it also builds an awesome network of women to support each other through the graduate school process. And so EDGE was an awesome experience, really, to because now I had this cohort of individuals that I could relate to who were starting the same journey at the same time as me. Even though we all went to separate places, once I started at Purdue, some of the girls that were in Chicago and in Notre Dame and everything, we would gather in Chicago for brunch from time to time and just kind of talk about our experiences, and that was really amazing. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful story.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. The rest is sort of history, there was the grad school struggle, the thesis struggle, the defense struggle, and here I am, I graduated. Yeah.
That's right. And I'm so pleased to hear a couple of things. I know the EDGE program well, and we've at my university had EDGE students to go through, and she's done so well. So that's a great program. And I was so pleased to hear you talk about the Alliance and how it sort of helped you somewhere along the way as well. When you just sort of think back at the Alliance, what one or two sentences kind of come into mind?
I think it's a gentle introduction to postgraduate opportunities, I suppose, I would say.
Okay. Okay. Well, I tell you what, you're certainly one of our proud products, and we're just so pleased to have you do this interview, and it's going to be watched by many. It's going to be helpful to quite a few students somewhere along the way. I tell you, April, here you are with a terminal degree in math and undergraduate accolades, etc. You must be a genius. What do you say when people say something like that?
Well, I guess the first thing I would say is thanks. I think that, because people usually mean such a thing as a compliment, but I think the other thing I feel though is that sometimes people say things like that, like, oh, you did these things, you must be a genius, because they don't quite see it in the fact that they could do this themselves. And I certainly feel like overwhelmingly, like if I can do this, anybody can, right? Like I mean, I feel like I had it's of course a difficult process, but I mean, you can get through it. Like if a person has enough passion to pursue their dreams, you can really plug through this subject matter and really get through it. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we appreciate that, and that's kind of one of the things that we wanted to for this interview to point out is that they can do it.
Yeah.
And you are a prime example, and not too far removed from other students as well. Um, I'd like to maybe ask another question, and it might be a little personal, and so just feel free not to answer if you don't want to, or reflect on it. But give me a time in your mathematical career for which you were almost devastated. You were about to quit. You're throwing in the towel, and then I want you to go to the other end and give me a moment for which you were very pleased and proud of your mathematical talent. So kind of extreme both ways.
Yeah, of course. So I can I'll give the tough one first. So I think so throughout this whole journey, there's so many like ups and downs and peaks and valleys that kind of for both categories, there are a number of answers that I could give, but I'll give one that perhaps would be kind of more relevant to students that might watch this. So I remember as I was doing my undergraduate coursework in math, I got to calculus 3, which at my university was like the multivariate kind of calculus. And for some reason, I kind of like had a pretty tough time with it. Like the just kind of abstracting to like the multiple dimensions and everything like that was pretty tough for me. Like when I first was exposed to the topic. And I remember this was for that like week or so that I was a computer science major. I kind of was talking about what I wanted to major into a professor in that department. And I mentioned to him, yeah, I've just been having a tough time with calculus 3. And that professor said to me, well, it's quite possible that you can't really do anything about that. It's probably because you're a woman, and women typically can't really visualize in multiple dimensions, or kind of like put together these really type of logical understandings of things. And I remember just kind of being stunned into like just kind of like I guess I didn't agree with what he was saying, but just kind of nodding at the time, because I was like in a one-on-one with a professor, so I didn't argue, and I was like just a young undergrad. And I think that I was already feeling so down on that subject, to have someone like who I like at the time looked up to say that I couldn't do it was just like devastating.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the way that I came back from that was, I think I just continued to work on it. And the next exam that I took in calculus 3, I like did really well on. And I was like, oh, actually, he was completely wrong. Like I can totally do this. And I think I probably was actually driven by a little bit of spite, right? Because for somebody to tell you that like, it is because you're a woman that you can't do something, that's the number one way to motivate me to do that thing and to do that thing well. So. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was the bad one. So a good one I would say is so for anybody that might not be familiar with the graduate school process, so there's coursework at the beginning and a research at the end where you write your dissertation, but the kind of the fence or the hurdle to jump between the two is usually some type of qualifying exam. And
Yes.
at my university, at Purdue Statistics, it was a written exam, and there are 4 different subjects that you can take these exams in. And the way the structure of ours was is that you needed to gather a total number of points that you add up across 3 exams or something like that. So these exams are like pretty difficult, like the level that they're at, right? They're kind of like the weed out process between getting you from the coursework to the research. And people go years taking and retaking these exams. And often they're the thing that make people quit along the way. And so over the leading up to taking my exams, I was pretty nervous about it, seeing kind of a lot of people not get through them. I think I attempted them once, but I hadn't even had the coursework associated with them. So like, I don't even really account that as a real attempt.
Oh,
But,
wow.
but yeah, I studied, once I had all the coursework to be ready for the exams, I studied that whole summer and I really put the work in. And I took the exams and I totally passed them on the first try with more points than I needed to even pass. And I think that that was just such a like, an unquestionable like triumph in terms of showing me that I could do this. Like I was at the level that I needed to be at to get a PhD. And like, it was just like, you just can't argue with it. It was just plainly awesome. So I would think that's a peak right there.
Yeah. April, that can't happen. That doesn't happen.
It does not happen. Like people
That's right.
spend
I tell you
years,
what.
sincerely.
Oh man, that's a good one, and yeah, that's a very critical point. You know, that's the point for which if you get past that point, then that's the point where the school is really ready to invest in you. So
Mhm.
very key. And I share with you, as you mentioned in KL3, I don't know why it seems like going from an interval to a ball was a big jump.
Yeah.
A lot more. But you said something that we need to explore it a little bit more, this comment about you being a woman, and so you won't be able to understand it because of that. That had to be very challenging experience for you. But as a woman of color in particular, let me just hear you talk a little bit about your journey and some of the things that you've sort of realized that women might have to go through that I, as a male, wouldn't necessarily think about. I'm often reminded when my wife will come home and she will kind of share some experiences for me, and I'll say, no, that can't be. No, they didn't think that. But I'm looking from a man perspective, and of course she's not. So let's just explore that just a little bit more
Mhm.
with a few comments that you might have.
Yeah, I think that so I'll say for one that I think that I've despite the fact that I have had those moments that I can 100% point to and say, wow, that was entirely because I was a woman that a person said that, I reacted that way to me. I will say that I've been privileged in that I've just happened upon kind of like very female spaces in this field, which does not happen to everyone. But that
Mhm.
being said, I can say that there are some experiences that have been par for the course. For example, like I would say, there are kind of those kind of microaggressions that kind of pile up a little bit. So I think being a young woman in an undergrad program, I think that while I've always felt supported by Xavier's math department and everything like that, I think that like maybe external people, even people I don't go to university with, who I would tell them I'm in college or something like that, I feel like I would pretty often get comments about like being in college to find someone to marry, right? Like that I'm there for a like MRS degree, right? Instead of a BS degree or something like that. So like, I don't know, those kind of assumptions and comments like that people make offhandedly and perhaps not even meaning to be malicious, kind of like, they might infiltrate your mind a little bit and make you think, what am I here for? Like, so I think there's those things. I think that coming into graduate school, I think the statistics side of the mathematical sciences, in my experience, has been more equally weighted between male and female than perhaps the math side is, or even the pure math side is. Um, but but I think that one great thing is that kind of like in adversity, it helps you bond more with other people. So like going to the EDGE program, which was for women, kind of that program really kind of prepared me for the fact that I might be going into these majority male spaces, and kind of really impressed upon me the importance of making networks, especially with other women, so that we can support each other through these processes. So I think that my experiences as a woman definitely have made me seek out networks at every step of the way of my like educational career and my career in industry. And then yeah, I also remember once in graduate school, an older professor, I was like checking my grad student mailbox or something like that. And an older professor kind of like turned to me and said, oh, hey, the copier seems to be low on paper. And I was like, okay. And he was like, the copier is low on paper. And I realized that he thought that I was like, I worked there, you know, like that I was like an administrative assistant, which is not to say those careers aren't like noble and super needed, because of course the administrative like assistants are how grad schools run. Like that is just, yeah. But it was just interesting because at that point I was like in my 4th year. I had long qualified for a PhD. I was known across the department, but like he just hadn't taken notice of me, right? And kind of assumed either because I was young or because I was Black or because I was female, not sure which one, that I couldn't be a PhD student, right? And but I kind of think that experiences like that, while in the moment kind of like rock you, they prepare you for they help you to understand that people might not be perceiving you the way you truly are, right? That that as a woman you might be prejudged in this field, and I think even being aware that those things happen helps you to prepare yourself for the next time when it happens, right? So you're not as disoriented. So yeah, so I think it's being a woman in any discipline, but particularly mathematical sciences, is kind of like an experience of microaggressions or overt like negative comments like that, but it's also an experience of learning to overcome those and how to build networks and how to get support systems to get through those things.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your honesty in addressing that as well. April, if you could do it all over again, what would you do differently?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually kind of like think about this all the time because particularly the thesis portion of grad school for me was really difficult. Like I had a really hard time with the kind of, you go through coursework, you pass your qualifying exams and you start research and there's no more structure. Like there's so little structure left to your day. And you kind of have to like in that moment be a grown up and figure out how to orient your days and how to do things like that. So I think that in hindsight, I would have set up a schedule for my work for myself during that time. And like so many of the tools that I use now in my current job for tracking work and making progress against goals and setting goals and everything like that, I think that I would hope that I could bring that goal setting and like work prioritization framework into my graduate education. I also think that I would have spent more time. I didn't understand that coming out of a graduate program in statistics and then trying to go into a job in industry in data science or statistics, that there is kind of a disconnect between the two. Like there are certain technologies that are used in real life that are just not used in like a more traditional statistics grad school setting. So I would have spent more time kind of investing in learning technologies and more programming languages and such.
Okay, thank you. April, we're hopeful that many of these interviews will be seen by a variety of people. I would suspect that the non-traditional student might take a look at this. 12-year-old might take a look at this. 18-year-old female might take a look at this. Someone starting college, etc. All who have an interest in mathematics. And so just pick one of those categories to speak to. And what would you tell someone in that category who has an interest in mathematics? What type of advice would you give them?
Yeah, I guess I can speak to either the young person, the 12-year-old, or maybe the person going into college or coming out of college who's not sure about what they want to do with their lives, but they're interested in math. I would say that so this career path could really lead you to a lot of opportunities. And as you're thinking through those opportunities, kind of the way that I would approach it is think about my PhD advisor told me this in the past. As you're structuring your education and your future career, think about people that you really look up to. Like, who are the people that you want to be like when you grow up? So maybe that's a professor you saw once on a YouTube video. Maybe that's Elon Musk from Tesla or something like that. You can, so look at their career, look at the choices that they've made, and see how you can, in some ways, either emulate those choices or do even better than those choices, right? So, so that's something I would suggest. Another thing I would suggest is look at your hobbies that you have and think about why the hobbies are interesting to you. And that'll really kind of point you to things that you might want to do. Like, for example, I really love like computer games, like watching YouTube videos, all things internet. But one thing that I like that really interests me is how people can create content of different types, and that content makes it around the world, right? Like how content spreads through the world. So that's really interesting to me. And if I break that down, what makes that really interesting to me is like, how do you understand how a piece of content relates to a person's affinities for the different types of things that they like? And when I really break that down more, I can see that you can break that down into a machine learning problem. It's really a matching problem. So you can like build mathematical or statistical like models to predict this, right? That's basically what I do for my job right now. And so basically what I'm trying to say is that oftentimes when you look at the things you like and you break down why you like them, if you're a person who's interested in math, a lot of times the things that you like about them are math. And like, those are the types of things that you can pull out and try to go towards studying in your future.
Well said. Well said. You reminded me of a good friend of mine who entered undergraduate, and one day she was in the union and saw all of these photos on the wall, people called Hall of Fame from the institution. And she looked up every last one of those, every last one of the organizations that they've been in, and the things that they've done. And needless to say, years later, her picture was up there as well, Hall of Fame. So I'll have to tell her that about us talking about her. At any rate, you have lots of accolades behind you. You've done very, very well. Many degrees with your name on it and with the word mathematics and statistics on it as well. Tell me if you can recall a time for which you sat back and you maybe first felt like you were a statistician.
Yeah. Let me think about that. Okay, I think that, so there's two levels to this. So one, I think, happened in graduate school. So the research that I did was in the field of bioinformatics, which is kind of a crossover between biology and chemistry, and applying statistical methods to data that comes from those fields. So that meant that in my PhD work, I often got to work with chemists who are doing, like, real wet lab experiments, and then kind of like creating these data sets that I would then run like statistical approaches on. And so kind of in working with the grad student that I would communicate the most with in one of these chemistry labs, I first noticed that there's like almost like this kind of reverence for like, oh, I've produced this data, but I have no idea what to do with it. Like, like she was really impressed that I could have any idea of what to do with the data. And I think that was probably one of the first times that I saw someone who is was pursuing a PhD same way as me. So like, as far as I'm concerned, like an expert in their field, really like having respect for my expertise in my field of statistics. So I kind of really felt like a statistician in those interactions, because like those were my first experiences of being an expert. And the other example I can give is, so now I work at a tech company, and we run a lot of experiments at tech companies. So like any given website that you might use is typically running lots of experiments where they might expose a new feature to half of the people that come to the website, and the other half get the control, which is the old experience. And you kind of compare how the two groups with the different experiences behave. So those are experiments in the tech industry. So we analyze these experiments all the time, and you can imagine data comes from that, and you need to use like pretty typical statistical methods to analyze these tests and to give a result that says like, is this statistically significantly better or not? So I mean, all the time I have my colleagues who I respect a huge amount come and check in with me and ask, is the way that I'm approaching this correct? Like, am I understanding the assumptions of this model I'm using? And so I think that having colleagues and coworkers come to me and ask me questions about statistics really helps me to feel like a real grown-up statistician.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Let's go back a little bit. You mentioned a little bit of this, but describe a little bit of the community that you grew up in, and now that you're a professional statistician, then that's kind of a different community. But you're the same person, even though you've kind of grown in between. And so talk a little bit about those two communities, and maybe with the statistics of mathematics kind of being the theme that's somehow nudging those two communities to where you were born and grew up in now in terms of your profession.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, I'm from a really small town in southern Louisiana. So as far as careers that involve kind of mathematics or the math sciences, there are very few of those there. So I think that, and this might be the experience of a lot of people who haven't had exposure to a wide like breadth of mathematics, is that like the viewpoint on mathematics is that it's like, arithmetic, right? There's no real distinction between like other types of math and arithmetic. So if you're interested in math, maybe you'll become like an accountant or work in finance or something like this. So that's kind of the viewpoint of mathematics that I had in my hometown. But at the same time, there's also, so as I mentioned before, I have an older brother who, unlike me, has kind of always known he wanted to be an engineer. Like the type of engineer kind of shifted slightly as he got older, but he was always interested in like, as a kid, he was really interested in like civil engineering and stuff. So I think just from hanging out with my brother and stuff, that's where I kind of like heard things about like angles and like different types of lines and curves and stuff like that, because he was always really interested in like the interstate that they were building, like that connected our small town to like the rest of the world. So like those were my main exposures to math and science, and when I think back on it, I can't think of any like adults that I knew that worked in a really kind of technical discipline. But if I kind of like compare that to the community that I have now, it's pretty entirely different in that now I live in Seattle, Washington, which is like one of the tech capitals of the USA. Like there are tech companies everywhere. Like this is Amazon town, right? So
Yes.
so there's that. I know so many people that work in really technical disciplines, and in particular, because I moved to Seattle originally to do this program called Insight, which is a data science bridge program from PhD to industry, basically.
Mhm.
Most of my network and community here in Seattle is just made up of data scientists who have PhDs in various different disciplines. So
Oh,
just kind of like the people I'm around are just so kind of entirely different than what who I had back home. So I don't know, conversations tend to devolve into talking about math or statistics, or I know a lot of physicists, sometimes physics, so that's pretty interesting. But I think the common thread that I could draw between the two is kind of the same way my brother lit up when he would talk about like the angles and engineering that went into building interstates is the
mhm.
same light up I see when people talk about new machine learning models, like in my kind of data science crew here in Seattle. So it's pretty cool.
Okay. Okay, good job. Thank you so very much for that. Um, I want to change the subject again and maybe ask for some personal perspectives of some things. And if you don't feel comfortable in answering, you don't have to, but you can explore it as much as you'd like. But we'd probably be amiss if we didn't talk about today's social climate and what's going on with respect to racial concerns of the day and police brutality that we're facing, and the conversations that's having to emerge from that. Now you a professional statistician, and so how does your role as a professional fit off into that conversation, and what would that conversation include from your perspective?
Mhm. So I think that so there are a few different ways that this kind of enters the conversation. One, in that I am a Black person and I am a human, right? I see all these things happening. Like I mean, even before the latest things that have happened with the murder of George Floyd and all the rest, I like somehow along the way developed anxiety anytime I'm around a police officer. Like I notice that I have that now. So like I'm like living this experience, you know, kind of the same way that many of the people watching probably are. So I'm affected as a person, certainly. And then in my career as a data scientist, so I think one thing particularly, I feel like maybe in the sciences, we really kind of stray towards is trying to keep things kind of all business, all like topical all the time. But one thing I really kind of have come to appreciate since I've been like working now is that you also have to respect the person that you work with, right? So in my day-to-day work, like when I have meetings with people, lately we start with how are you doing, like as a person? And
Mm.
so it affects me as a data scientist and as a coworker that I'm like really kind of checking in with the people that I associate with every day to make sure they're okay, because like the thing that we're meeting about can always wait, right? But I need to know that the person's okay that I'm talking to. And then I think kind of aside from the personal, as a statistician or a data scientist, um, there are like particularly like recently there's been a lot of talk about how machine learning models and statistical models and things like this can introduce bias into various systems. There was like this terrible case in like, I believe it was Virginia or something, where there was bias in the data that was used to build a model and was causing minority communities to be disproportionately impacted by like child services reports or something like this. I think it was Virginia, not sure about that. But so like, I think that particularly thinking about like equity, equality, and racism and everything like that, like as a data scientist, I always need to take a step back, examine the approaches that I'm taking to building models and the data that I'm using to make sure that there's no, that I'm not perpetuating systemic racism through the things that I build. So that's always a conscious process. And also there's calling out potentials for systemic racism in the work that my coworkers do or that I see being done in my field. So there's all that.
Oh, thank you. Very, very well received. Thank you so much. April, we've had a chance to look at you currently. We've had a chance to look at your past. Let's take a futuristic look and tell me what you think April might possibly be doing in 10 years from now, 20 years from now, et cetera. What does the future hold?
Yeah, so I hope that, well, number one, I hope that in the future I'm happy, right? That's the main thing, right? Just want to be happy. The good news though is that I genuinely love being a data scientist. Like I genuinely love the things that I do, which I think is unfortunately kind of rare, like for like most people. So I think that in order to be happy in 10 years, I would still want to be doing data science in 10 years. So so the way that I see that working out for my career is that I'm a principal data scientist somewhere, where principal data scientist is like the like most hallowed position that a data scientist that's not a manager basically could still have. And like just building really awesome like tools using data and mathematics that make people's lives better in some way. That's just what I want to do.
Oh, okay. Thank you. You've already kind of semi-answered my follow-on question for that, but I'll ask it anyway, and that is for, you've mentioned it so much in terms of data science, so I was going to ask you to give me a shout out to data science. Why should somebody go into data science as opposed to some other area of statistics or some other area of mathematics? And so you're trying to lure them into to data science. So give me a shout out for that.
So the best shout out I can give is that this is so fun. Like I genuinely like think that my job is the most fun thing ever. And I'll say that data science is everywhere. So like if you've ever searched for something on Google and wondered why the first result you get is so good, right? And the list of results you get, that's because of data science, right? Or if you've ever used Netflix and the thing that they predict that you'll rate 5 stars really was really good, then that's data science. Like all these really cool things that we've seen created over the last like maybe decade are in some way motivated by data science. And I'll also say though that some very scary things have been created by data science. So when you're on Instagram and that ad between the two posts you just looked at seems like it was created for you and like entirely targeted towards you so that you click it and you spend your money, that's data science. And so these data science tools are so extremely like powerful and scary that we need people that are responsible and good. Ultimately, we need good people doing data science. So like if you are a good person and you are interested in data and mathematics and kind of want to work on real world problems that are driving us forward as like a human race, then data science is for you.
Oh man, if I was younger, you would have had me. That would have got me. Thank you so much. We'll prepare probably to complete this interview, but I've asked a lot of questions of you and gotten a lot of comments, but I'm wondering if it's one that I haven't asked. You know, the nature of this is to for us to present to a wide variety of people so they can get an opportunity to know you and to know what you've done in your career. And many of them would like to mimic that, we hope. And so what question have I not asked, or we could put it another way, what would be some closing comments that you would have that would give us more insight to you that we hadn't talked about? Be there any?
So I would reiterate the point that we kind of started out with at the beginning of this, which is that if I can do this, anybody can. So kind of pursuing a PhD in the math sciences is really difficult, but as long as you can build communities and networks of people to support you through it, then you can make it through it. Like, you can do this. And I'll also say, like, on a more concrete note, once I finished my PhD in statistics, it wasn't over, right? Like, I decided to go from statistics to data science, which arguably are just synonyms, right? But still, there were some key skills that I needed to learn to bridge the gap and to get a job in industry. And every single day I learn new things, like, and I've learned so much about, like, programming and kind of engineering and other disciplines that I can pair with mathematics to really kind of like make my skill set so wide and really effective. So I guess I'll just summarize that by saying that the learning never ends. So you don't have to be worried about being stagnant if you pursue this path.
Thank you so very much. April, you're a remarkable person, and you are going to be a great mentor to many people. The Alliance is so very, very proud of you, and you're exactly the type of person that we had envisioned coming into it, being a part of it. And I know Bill Jones well. I'm at the institution where he did his undergraduate now. So we talk and see each other quite a bit. And I look forward to following your career as well, 10, 20 years from now. And so when you get to be a billionaire, don't forget to give back to the Alliance.
For sure, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time off to share. And in the meantime, you go and have a great day.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.